This is Talking Infrastructure, the podcast brought to you by global infrastructure consultancy AECOM. This episode, we are back on the road. This is the second of two we've recorded with our panel of experts in front of a live audience at the UK's Real Estate Investment and Infrastructure Forum, more commonly known, of course, as UK REIF. I'm Toby Sadler. Welcome to Talking Infrastructure. Once again, the panel took over the AECOM Cafe venue at UK REIF. The subject, maximising chemistry and streamlining delivery, getting Northern Powerhouse Rail to construction. The focus was on the next 18 months of the project, which are going to be crucial, not just for the railway itself, but for confidence. Confidence from communities, confidence from industry, and confidence to invest in the wider growth story across the north. We looked at the choices facing NPR, how city regions can maximise the benefits, what credible delivery looks like, and what needs to change to move this from aspiration to construction. I was joined on the panel by Gordon Kells, Chief Operating Officer for the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade, Megan Knights, Strategy and Growth Director for Transportation at AECOM, Rosario Barcena, Rail Programme Director at Skanska, and Lola McAvoy, the Member of Parliament for Darlington. Gordon Kells started things off with an introduction to his work and his involvement with Northern Powerhouse Rail.
Hi, afternoon everyone. So on TRU, we are effectively the precursor to NPR. We are the start of the NPR journey, and we are trying to lay the foundations for how you deliver major programmes in the earth in the north. So I think from my perspective, we can give some insights in terms of why TRU has been successful and why we think it can grow and build into NPR and deliver into a long-term successful set of projects in the north.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. Megan.
Thanks, Toby. So AECOM, as an engineering business that operates around the world, feels very passionate about being part of the NPR journey going forward to ensure that it really delivers the growth for the north that we think it's got the potential to do. As a Manchester resident myself, I'm very keen to see that coming to fruition so that we increase opportunity for the communities that we have in the region.
Perfect, Rosario.
Well, Skanska, what we tend to do is convert complex rail ambitions into practical and buildable solutions. So NPR is a great example where we can add the value, and looking forward to further both.
Perfect, thank you. And Lola.
Yeah, and I'm Lola McAvoy, so I'm the MP for Darlington. And last week, I had the pleasure of attending the opening of our new Darlington railway station. So that's £140 million worth of investment. And it's an expansion that means that we're even more ready for growth and investment and for more people to come to Darlington and to work in the surrounding areas, because we know that rail is definitely a key catalyst for local and regional growth. And I think for us, as the home of the railway, and there's nobody, I'm looking around to see if there's anyone who'll dare dispute it, though the Derby colleagues in Parliament sometimes try and rival my claim. But we, 200 years ago, we had the first passenger railway from Stockton to Darlington, and it's a core part of the town's history. And that's because, you know, it's a sense of pride because it transformed growth in the country and globally. But it is really important that when we're talking about how we redistribute some of the opportunities that people in the north have, we have transport and fast delivery, efficient railway operations, and obviously cost-effective infrastructure. I think it's really... The other thing that I think is really important to note is the frequency of trains really matters, because we're seeing in Manchester that where you've had an extra stop or where you've seen new rail infrastructure and stops, you see massive growth in that around that stop as well. And I think Chancellor's mentioned quite a few times that they want to see much more residential build up around some of the more rural areas that are going to be on some of these key lines. So it is actually a really exciting opportunity.
Great, thank you. I should say also that the nature of how in demand you are, Lola has to step out about 4 o'clock, so we will make the most of your time while we've got you. So thank you. Perhaps I could come to you, Gordon, first of all, just as a sort of an overview a little bit. You know, we're looking at the next 18 months, particularly on this panel, but in real life, of course, as well. What is so critical about the next year and a half in this NPR project?
Oh, I think for us at TRU, we have to continue to demonstrate that we have the capability to deliver something as big and complex as NPR. And I think in parallel to that, NPR have to really sell what it is they actually want to buy, not what the scope of what they want to build, but what they actually want to buy in terms of capability. And then we can start developing that. At some point, that'll turn into what you actually need to build as physical infrastructure. But you need surety in terms of what you want to buy. And then that'll then say, well, will that provide us the growth in the economy we need? Are we delivering the right system of transportation that'll get people moving and actually show the aspirational growth that the North is desperately after?
Yeah, and that growth story is so important here, isn't it, Megan? This isn't just about a railway.
No, it's not. I think the railway is that kind of spine, that bedrock, but it's really how within the regions and cities they build off it. And I think building from what you said, Gordon, you've talked about almost maybe from a delivery perspective, what's the capability needed? What do people want to build off? I think what's maybe been a missing element to a lot of major infrastructure projects in the UK in the past couple of years is that we have not explained to the public, to the people who ultimately are paying and sometimes suffer the sort of the side effects of these schemes, what the benefit is to them. I wasn't going to name it, but there was obviously a lot of press about HS2 yesterday. It lost the public support. Were the constituents of the North sad when it got cancelled? I'm not sure they weren't going to see any benefit anytime soon. We can't have NPR going the same way. We need to explain NPR as a scheme in a way and how it brings genuine benefit that is tangible, not, you can get X, Y, and Z faster. What does that mean? Does that mean you can now take on a job that you didn't think you could do before? So really look at that in a kind of much more specific and individual way to those communities so that they're behind it and they keep on lobbying their MPs to make sure this scheme gets built, not that they're actually just not bothered if it doesn't continue.
Perfect. And Rosario, I'd be interested to get your take then on this year and a half bit. It's about getting a foundation right, isn't it? So that the project starts and heads in the right direction.
That's right. I mean, I'm building on what is just said. If the industry or even the communities have the confidence that the scheme is going to happen, they'll invest. The economy will grow, and we just need to. What we need to do with the scheme is actually take it from that ambition into a reality. In terms of aligning the scope, aligning all of the bodies that are going to be involved in it, making sure that there is continuity between all of the different phases from development to design to actually buildability, and in a way actually have that buildability in mind. Start having the early contractors like ourselves involved and the supply chain involved early, because they will then provide not only the sort of the talent and the skills, but also the technology, the innovation that could potentially bring, could utilize on this scheme in the next few years.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, Johnny, jump in there.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, because I think it's really interesting about the pipeline and the communications with communities. So the skills pipeline is absolutely essential, that we need to turbocharge our sovereign capacity in terms of skills for these big infrastructure projects. We've seen it previously where people have been hired, laid off, the work hasn't been done. Some people have been stood by the side of the road wanting to do the work, and other people, suddenly you go and try and find them, and lo and behold, they've got another job, obviously. And I think we need to start owning that decision and saying to communities, look, we're looking for X thousand number of whatever the work is that it'll be that month, and saying it's not just gigs, but it's long-term career, project management and employment. And I think once you start saying that to communities and people start knowing that this is, they're on the Northern Powerhouse Rail project, people are more than happy to get behind it. I think one of the things, I was co-chair of the Labour Growth Group for the first year and sat on the Treasury Select Committee my first year in Parliament, and it was really interesting to see the pushback from industry about the stopping and starting of the last government, and how actually they just want long-term calm planning. Just make a plan and stick to it. The markets will react to the plan, but you just must go the course and stick to it. And I think it's fascinating to me that is one of the big barriers to growth. So it's the certainty of the longevity of the project. I think government are doing everything they can to send those signals to the market that we are going to deliver this. I think in terms of the skills pipeline, one of the things that we're focused on in Darlington, just bring it to a hyper-local level, is we were able to get growth mission funding from the government, from the Chancellor in the last budget. We were one of only 3 projects to get it, because we were able to demonstrate how a bit of public money, which is 15 million, which is a lot for Darlington, but is a small amount for Rachel Reeves to choose when she's allocating. But it means a huge deal to our town, because it's going to be to transform the skills training provision. And so we're creating this new STEM subject training centre, which is going to be working in partnership with industry around infrastructure projects. So industry can help form their skills pipeline from a much younger age, and then say these are going to be top well-paying careers. So it won't just be that last-minute dash to go down to the agency and say, have you got 600 of these tomorrow? Because that's not good for people living in these communities. It's not good for my constituents to be working gig by gig. They want long-term planning just like everybody does. So it's going to be interesting to see how these things do actually impact growth quite quickly when the money starts dishing out.
Please jump on, yeah.
I got to a skills perspective. So last year we delivered over £1 billion worth of work. This year we've delivered over £1 billion worth of work. So we've built a capability to deliver high-value, long-term projects. We've got roughly 500 graduates, 500 apprentices, 250-odd graduates. So we're building a core capability in the north of England, with 80% of them living within 40 miles of the route. So the capability is there and growing. You're right, we just need to keep feeding it with some complex projects that they can grow on and keep learning and keep adapting.
Perfect. I wonder, though, just to pick up, it's a great sort of start. You say foundation, skills foundation. Often we look at these big projects as perfection being the enemy of good. And I wonder whether, looking ahead, there are some hard choices that need to be made, dare I say compromises, to make sure we get a railway that everyone wants to use and is proud of.
Yeah, but it starts with what you want to buy first, and then you say, well, what do I need to either build or create through business change in terms of a process and procedures and how we actually run the system of the railway. And then from that, you then go out. But you'd have to review through that design cycle. What's the right thing? What's the most cost-effective thing to give us the capability we're after? But you start with a foundation that says, this is what I want first. And then you can kind of, we can't afford that, we need just it here, but you can make those decisions at the right time.
Yeah, I think that is really crucial, isn't it? Because I think government in the past has been reticent to dish out a long order book, even when it's critical infrastructure. And I've got one example in my constituency in Darlington, which is, I think it's a 100-year-old company, and they are the only people in the country who make this very specific box that is needed for the railway, and they're absolutely essential. They might as well have the orders in advance, and they still don't get that confirmation in time when they're the only ones who make it. They know that, so it's interesting to me that these things have real world consequences to businesses and to, like, obviously the staff who are manufacturing them. And I think thinking about that long-term pipeline for business security is really essential for the supply chain, definitely.
Yeah. Would you resonate with that, Megan?
I think so. And I think there's also the part around, actually, whilst it can feel less easy to sell, the benefit of a phased approach comes in there, because it means your demand is less lumpy. I think we've seen what happens when you suddenly almost create a demand that is exponential. Everybody's got to massively gear up, and it does have an impact on costs, which is ultimately a massive contributor to success of infrastructure at the moment. So I think that you need the confidence in the pipeline, but it's not that no one's prepared to accept that we deliver over time, because actually, as long as the confidence is there and it's going to happen, then that enables building up the right skills and delivering at the right price, I think, for the customer.
I think as long as I would say yes, absolutely, because you don't want to overload the capacity. But I do think there is merit in saying to a workforce, you are going to be working on this project for 4 years, for 5 years, because I think it is hard for people to think about their mortgages, think about their family income, and to stay in an employer, and hard for their business to keep those people on without that security. So there has to be a balance there for putting the working people's experience as well. I mean, we saw it with Hitachi, where it was right next to my patch, right on the boundary. And when we first came in, we had to really turbocharge sorting out some of the agreements that had been made there, because there was just a reticence, a lack of urgency. It wasn't a malicious thing. It was just a lack of urgency and not a priority. And I think that has got to be a shift, definitely. It's interesting to see that we've got big announcement from the Chancellor coming out today about the National Critical Infrastructure Clause that is going to protect critical infrastructure from judicial review, which is something that industry has been saying for a long time, and give Parliament sovereign capacity to say these projects are going to have to go ahead, because I think that is something that has led to delays and the fear of them, and then the legal costs. So yeah, it's an interesting move in the right direction, I think.
Rosario, I'm assuming that kind of confidence and momentum are exactly what you want to hear when you're getting involved in this project.
Yeah, because for me, a pipeline is not a wish list. It should have that certainty and that continuity. And that stop-start needs to stop, basically. And it needs to be, you need to remove that fragmentation. And therefore, you have that continuity to the workforce, and actually that confidence for everybody to be behind that scheme that you create. As you phase delivery, the confidence grows, the investment grows, the economic growth of the regions. You know, I know it's connecting the cities, but actually it needs to be treated as a regional growth program. But everybody needs to be sort of integrated with that shared vision, and actually the pipeline, you know, delivering that pipeline not as a wish list.
Yeah, Gordon, is that the message we're getting in terms of to those sort of city regions to stay, think about your strategic investment, you know, while you're all kind of part of a joined up thinking, actually you all need to lift as well.
All kind of comes together. You get certainty of order but for the supply chain, therefore they'll invest in people and capability to deliver it. You'll get people saying, well, we've now got something that I can invest in the local area because it's growing. We see that in terms of the benefit of TRU at Kirklees, who are putting a lot of investment in the local area and about Huddersfield. So you need to start the ball rolling and it'll amplify. And North NPR will just make that bigger than TRU have managed to do today, because it's of a wider area, it's touching a lot more cities. And you start seeing a greater wealth of generation across the whole of the North.
Yeah, so Megan, I think what we need then is for people to believe it, isn't it? The trust in, we can talk as much as we like about it, but we need people to go, I believe you're going to implement this and this is going to happen.
I think so. Unless the industry and also the public confidence is there that it's going to happen and it's very tangible to them, I think it will be hard to get some of that momentum, especially because really what we want to see is that NPR, you know, it isn't the simplest of schemes to explain, I think, but it is arguably creating that whole corridor across the north. But really to maximise the growth and get the full benefit of it, the kind of the chemistry which has been talked about, we need the city regions to essentially be springing off NPR with infrastructure and investment. So I think that would be private investment, not just public investment in the regions. I think it's fantastic that there is now much more confidence given to the various combined authorities that they're going to get money for infrastructure in their own regions, but also to bring in private investment. And the Great North Summit was here on Monday, and you know they're really seeking to attract money in for a variety of industries across the region. And I think the North coming together in a sort of a non-competitive way between the regions is really going to enable NPR to happen. With that different kind of industry strategy, people don't want to just be able to move from Bradford to Leeds. They want to allow, it's like, well, if I'm interested in this type of industry, if this is where I see my passion and my career, I need to be able to get from Bradford to Manchester to Liverpool. And at the moment, the infrastructure isn't there to support that kind of ambition from our communities, basically. So I think we need NPR to provide some of that big movement, but within the city regions, it needs to be the spine off which people then sort of leapfrog further infrastructure, basically, and inward that investment from outside.
I mean, Rosario, is that, do you need more come from an organisation like Skanska? Do you need more of that reassurance? Do you need more of that framework to build confidence?
Oh, I think so, because the thing is, as you were saying, the moment that the industry or even the supply chains start to see that it is actually happening, and that all of the combined authorities or the local authorities are working together to actually deliver the scheme, they'll invest ahead of the actual line being built. So yeah, I think that from my point of view is let's get on with it.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that will hopefully go some other way is if tomorrow, we're debating steel, and so the sovereign capacity is transport. The infrastructure plans will lead to growth from the jobs, as we've discussed, but we have to look at what else the transport will bring. And it is, the economic security, but it is also being able to move things at pace around the country. It really matters. I think we're looking at, and you guys will know more than me because you're the experts in this field, but from a brief glance, it said that, I think, is it Paddington to Reading is 22 minutes, and Liverpool to Manchester can be up to an hour and 26 or something, and it's almost the same distance geographically. So obviously you're not going to commute that, or you're just going to have a really hard time commuting that. And I just think those sort of things, it's about respect for what sort of jobs people want to do. And geographically, we are quite small, even though we think we're, I know we're big heavyweights on the global stage, but we are quite small geographically in the north. So we can invest and do it hopefully at pace and at scale.
Look, I know we're about to lose you, so just wanted, before you go...
Sounds like I'm dying.
We'll have a moment of silence for that. Just want to get your thoughts, because obviously Darlington is a bit of a microcosm of what happens when you really sort of supercharge a small piece of infrastructure. I just wondered if you... Any sort of lessons from that? We created that sort of new station there. What's the sort of instant legacy of that, do you think?
So I think that one of the lessons is that there was a slight delay from a really tricky bit of bridge. So I think I was certainly like, when's it opening? But actually some of these things there is naturally going to be delay on certain bits. Obviously you don't want to factor that in and get complacent, but I think it's fair to say when they tried to hover this bridge right the way across the track, that there was a bit of trouble there. I think transport is absolutely crucial, but transport alone will not lead to regional growth. It has to be in tandem with all of the other anchor institutions. You need the academic institutions, you need the business infrastructure, you need the business knowledge and capability. I've been talking all day about how to get investment out of the pension funds and out of the city and into the north. And it's about the language that you use, having the portfolio, being investment ready, and their skills that are very unique to the city. So we need to think about that sort of intellectual capability for those pitches, make sure that all of our local authorities are tooled up to put those pitches in at the right level so we don't miss our shot. But I do think it's about in the round, how can you crowd in that investment to see local growth? And Darlington is the fastest growing station on the LNER in terms of passengers coming off and getting on. And we're going to hopefully be able to see more east to west, so people will be able to go and enjoy the beautiful coast. I think one of the things that's important as well to note, and I know we're talking a lot about a business-facing audience, but actually from a leisure point of view, it's really hard to go out in Newcastle. You have to get a minibus back if you don't want to come out past 10 p.m. And so if you're in Darlington, Newcastle's got a lot to offer, but you might not go that far unless you're getting a minibus, which is very expensive. So these things will have a massive impact on the social outcomes and the social capital for the region as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your contributions. It's been very useful to get your insights. Appreciate it. Great. I'll come back down to you, Gordon. We're talking about... You touched about on phased delivery. I just wanted to get your sort of thoughts on what that looks like and how we make sure phased delivery doesn't mean stop-start. It means exactly that we go from the start to finish and then we get it all done.
Yeah, and I'll lean on TRU. So TRU is phased delivery. We're delivering that programme in project phases, and we're doing that because it's the right thing to do for the system that is the railway. The easiest way to deliver any infrastructure would just to shut the whole railway and take 4 years and build it. They did quick, and it'd probably be cheaper. But you'd end up with no customer base, you'd end up destroying the economy. So you need to do it in such a way that we can keep passengers on the railway using the service that's available and keep the economy growing at the same time. And delivering interim benefits as well, so that the customers can see what we're delivering. It's not just they're getting disrupted by construction work, but they actually see the benefits coming. They see stations like Darlington open up. They see the electrification that we've created at both sides of the route across the Pennines. They actually see physical progress, and they see that added value to their lives and their journeys.
Do you see, from what you've done at TRU, there are instant kind of recommendations you can now say to the broader project? It's like, look, what we thought going in was this, but now we know it's X, Y, and Z. Let's make some changes.
At TRU, when I started, so I've been in TRU 4 years. My background's in defence, not in the field. But when we started, we developed an enterprise model. But the enterprise model then to the enterprise model now has vastly changed in terms of the buy-in from other people in the industry, in terms of bringing in DFT, bringing in the train operating companies, and actually creating a collective that are actually there to deliver the outputs that we require. Now, we will continue to evolve. What we don't want to do is evolve to the extent where it's not of value to the industry. We want to evolve it so that we're setting up a capability and a blueprint that the rest of NPR can build on. Because I think what's forgotten is we are the start of NPR. We are phase one. So NPR has started, it is on the ground and it is delivering. And I think it's getting that message across that we can continue to grow, build and get better and improve how we do it, but we need that opportunity.
And Megan, do you think that essentially positive message is one that's going to help in the sort of the early stages of, I say, is that back to that next 18 months, isn't it? But to help form that next step.
I think if there is the clarity that is the plan, and it's not we're not really sure what we're doing, that intent, and also putting it in the terms that you've explained it there, that would it be easier to shut a railway? Clearly, is that acceptable for them to do? Obviously not. So I think that the kind of how that is put across and communicated is really important. TRU, you have those great signs that you see in the stations as, we have now electrified X percentage of the railway. People, I think that builds confidence in what we're doing. I think there's also some lessons we can take from perhaps other places globally. There are some circumstances where a big bang is a good way to go, but it's not always the case. And in particularly, to Lola's point, we are quite a physically constrained landmass. It becomes increasingly difficult. Even in places like France, they've expanded their high-speed network in phases, and that also means you're getting fare box revenue in, which ultimately helps support that ongoing expenditure. So I think it works as long as it's clear that it's the intent and it isn't a stop-start. It's we're employing you. This is a 10-year contract, and everyone's there with that.
I assume that reassurance is what you would look for.
Well, I think everybody wants that long-term vision, and that's what you need to have, that sort of long-term plan of what we're trying to achieve, and actually looking at how that phase delivery can actually happen or deliver the benefits early. Because the main thing is that obviously we need to integrate the scope with the access strategy, all of the operational constraints that we have to deal with on a live operational railway. So all of those things need to be integrated, but provided that you have that long-term vision of this is the plan and this is how we're going to get there, as opposed to that stop-start, then I think it will definitely unlock all of the investment, all of the confidence in the supply chain, all of the skills that you've already started building, and at the moment, these people will have the continuity to go from that phase of TRU into the next phases of NPR because they have that longevity. So
we're talking about this project almost inspiring people to invest and to build and so on and so forth. But of course, we need the funding at the beginning to make sure that we start that. I wonder, Gordon, in the current fiscal climate, let's call it, do you have the confidence that the money is going to be there when you need it?
We've put our business case in for TRU about 4 years ago, and we got the confidence in the government we're going to back the project. We need to do the same for the NPR for the long term. But we were able to set the vision that says this is what we are going to deliver for that money, and then made sure that we can continue to build confidence in terms of our design solution, and continue to grow. And I think we've demonstrated that level of capability. We've also demonstrated that, I don't know people that travel today, but we have the railway closed at the moment, but people are still able to travel by train from Manchester to Leeds. So if there's a will, there is a way to do it, that you can get both infrastructure built, but also keep the passengers running. And I think we've demonstrated that.
Questions for you still over funding, whether it needs to be a different approach?
I think that NPR has been set with a 45 billion funding envelope. There's clarity there. Whether that will be enough to cover the scheme is a question. And there's also a part that says, actually, if there is a way to bring other investment into funding NPR, why would you not do that? Because government has to make a lot of hard choices across the board on what it does. We've been part of a joint venture team with Perfect Circle working on the Northumberland line up in the northeast, so slightly further north than NPR is. And whilst a big chunk of that funding came from government, there was also a level of land value capture used to fund that, so around 40 million via land value capture. Now, for me, what's was kind of exciting about that is things like land value capture, often traditionally associated with, say, the MTR in Hong Kong, where you have huge population density, very expensive real estate. The Northumberland line is going through a rural area, which fundamentally has a lot of historic disadvantage in that area. So to be able to secure that level of additional funding via that mechanism, I think is a really great example of how you can get different funding streams in. It wasn't all of the scheme, it was a portion of it, but it's like, actually, if you can do that on that sort of 18-mile scheme with 7 stations there, what could you do for other parts of this route to bring in that additional revenue? If we can get more investment that makes sure that there are no questions around the funding or frees up expenditure for other government priorities, why would we not seek to do that? I think the ability is there, and it's something that needs exploration. And as the business cases are being built and finalised, something that needs to get more consideration.
No, that seems a very good point. I mean, you're nodding along, Rosario. I assume certainty in finances, of course, is what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think a credible investment model, because at the moment, we're also going to see potentially that fiscal devolution going forward. So there's definitely a blend of investment that can actually make MPR a lot successful, really, and I think it should be definitely explored, but actually develop a credible investment model. Otherwise, again, you lose the confidence, and there'll be no local investment in the area, or the supply chain won't be behind it.
Gordon, you want to come in on that?
I think that comes to your first point about the 18 months. If we can create what the future vision is for MPR in the north, then you can maybe attract investment, because you can describe what they're buying into and they can see what the benefit they're getting out of it. And I think actually selling that story, then you should be able to get investors interested. But you can't do that until you tell them what they're getting for the money.
Yeah, fair enough. Up until now, my journalistic instincts is to bring negative questions and so on. Why won't this work? Let's just assume we're going to get across that first hurdle and look at how we actually go ahead and build it. And I guess it's a word that comes up a lot in all of these sort of panels is collaboration. Gordon, for you, what does that mean, and what does that look like?
Well, so
You're okay. Yes, it's fine.
CRU 4 or 5 years ago was a network railway program. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've brought in, we've got supply chain partners in terms of our two alliances. We've got a program partner who helps augment roles that we don't have. We've got 2 train operating companies that are part of the enterprise. We've got DFT as part of the enterprise. We reach back into Network Rail for the maintenance, so the people are going to maintain it when it's built. So we've got everyone actually involved inside the tent of the enterprise, so that we're making the right decisions for the whole system railway, not just the infrastructure build. And I think getting that chemistry and having the trust and respect in one another to actually raise those issues and deal with them as and when they come up, I think is a really good model in terms of how you take it forward, both effectively and efficiently.
In terms of the AECOM approach, that would work?
Certainly. And whilst not a full enterprise model, that kind of collaboration of bringing in all the parties, bringing in the operators, is something that we did in the Northeast on Northumberland. And I think that operator engagement, arguably in the industry, is newer. I think there was perhaps a historic tension there, or whatever, but it brings a different way of thinking in, that kind of idea of actually, as a construction team, we think this is the best way to do something, or this is the best time to do something. And they can say, actually, no, this is when we know we've got the lowest passenger numbers. So making a move on a Wednesday night is much better from our perspective. And because you've got to maintain the support for the scheme. Nobody is delighted when their trains are sort of, cancelled or, bus diversions in. So I think that enterprise model, the alliancing models, are bringing everybody in and making sure it's a common good purpose, and that the outcome is the focus, not the little bit that team is responsible for, is distinctly the way forward. And TRU's been an excellent example, arguably quietly achieving great things and continuing to do that.
And I think it's an evolution. I mean, 4 years ago, there was lots of tension, some of it not healthy, between us and the train operating companies. But now, as we've built that level of trust and relationship and shown that we're there to deliver the railway system, that's building, and therefore you have far more constructive challenge. You still want challenge, you don't want to take that away from anyone. They have to fight their corner to an extent, but they do it in a very collaborative way so that we get to the right joint decision, rather than, as you say, well, this is my bit, I'm protecting my bit.
I suppose for you, Rosario, then in terms of, for you, that streamlined delivery, what does that look like for you? What do you guys need to make this look and feel like it's something you can get involved in?
I think on top of, having that sort of integration and that sort of alignment of incentives and that enables, for me, the key thing is empowered decision making, having the right teams involved making the right decisions, but also simplifying interfaces, governance, process. We seem to have created an enormous amount of red tape to a certain extent that I don't think it gets anywhere. When if you actually, your example about bringing the operator in, you just removed that interface because they're already there on the table. So something so simple to actually get them on board is already enabling a lot of, progress. And I think for me, that's the, it's not, nothing is not rocket science. It's just simple, simplify your interfaces, simplify your governance and allow the empowered to that decision making that will not, will get progress or build progress as opposed to slow the pace and increase costs and sort of.
You're nodding. I'm sure you want to come back on that, or
no. I think we're all in kind of agreement fundamentally, which is nice to hear.
There you go.
That should go to good progress in the future. I think as well, another perhaps one element that maybe we've not particularly touched on in that is arguably at the stage those alliances come in. That's almost when your big contracts are out. Actually bringing in the expertise that the likes of Rosario and, that is really vital to bring in earlier and getting those stakeholders engaged, because otherwise the risk is you develop a scheme in a level of bubble and without really thinking through and kind of utilising the smarts that are out there in the industry to really streamline and bring all the best components in. So I think making sure that we're bringing in that expertise early enough rather than waiting until you've got your kind of the point where someone says, I can procure my really big contract now. I think that's also a really key feature.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, jump in. We'll come down to Gordon.
I completely agree, because I think you bring contractor supply chain, but not only improves that constructability, but actually it minimizes any kind of redesign. You do things once. And not only that impacts on actually the cost, but actually on the workforce, keeping everybody safe by the time you get to site. There's a lot of benefits of doing this thing once and in the most efficient way, provided that you have the right suppliers and contractors involved from day one, as opposed to just waiting until it's potentially too late and you'll have to redesign or redo certain elements.
Feels like it makes sense. Gordon, you were going to come in on that.
So one of the things, we started really early with the contractors that were going to build it in terms of bringing in the alliances, because yes, they need to design it, but they need to design it with constructability in mind in terms of how they're going to physically build it. And you can't do that and put people with that level of uncertainty. So actually working through the right commercial model that says at a point in time where we have a level of, we've dealt with the bigger uncertainty and we've got all the risks that can be understood with a right level of commercial appetite, then you can go to full contract. But you have to go through that life cycle. You can't just turn up in day one and hand over, which tend to be a traditional model within the industry.
Yep.
And that will continue to evolve, I think.
Round of applause, please, for our panel. That brings this latest UK Reef episode of the Talking Infrastructure podcast to a close, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, then please like, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends and colleagues, and of course, feel free to plug it on social media. Until next time, thank you very much and goodbye.